Hello and welcome to Bar Snacks. This is the channel all about finance, business, economics, politics and policy. Today I'm going to be talking about Trump's debut literary effort, which I managed to read over the holidays. So, The Art of the Deal came out in 1987, and to be honest, it's got a lot of flaws in it, but I like it. It's a good book. It's widely known he has absolutely no part in writing it, but it does sound a lot like him. He uses words like great, big, wonderful, spectacular, things like this, very Trumpy language, and I have to say that I enjoyed it immensely. The way in which it's written with the words like great success and big profits seem almost to be a pastiche of Trump. It almost seems like a comedy book, and for that I quite like it. The book opens with a detailed description of a week's worth of deals that Trump is doing. This is back in 1987, so it was after Trump Tower, it was after the Grand Hyatt Hotel and everything. He was already a well-established businessman. He was just looking to expand his portfolio. And to be honest, you've got to give credit to the sheer amount of work that he does. The dedication he has to his business is absolutely unbelievable, and for this I can respect the man, notwithstanding his political views. But anyway, he takes calls all throughout his day up until 12 at night, and then he's in there at 6 in the morning ready to do business again. The sheer amount of work, sheer amount of business, the sheer amount of deal making that this guy does is seriously impressive, and it made for good reading. After a week-long diary of deals, the book then goes on to talk about Trump's childhood, and Trump seemingly manages to talk about his childhood without making him sound privileged in any way. Despite the fact that he went to Wharton Business School, he was in the family business, and he doesn't directly acknowledge this in the book, but the financial aid he received from his father, which is said to be significant, could be up to $400 million. Doesn't say that in the book though, not a mention there. But Trump somehow manages to make it sound like he's just any ordinary man, and that anyone can do this no matter what. But let's get into the real meat of the book. All the deals, all the major deals that made Trump throughout his career, that grew him from just a small little property developer to a celebrity, a mogul, a hugely successful businessman. And this is where the book really shines, because the way it talks about these deals and how it frames how they were done is very interesting to someone who's interested in finance and stuff like that. While I'm sure most of the stuff he says is absolutely, completely oversimplified, and deal making has actually a lot of tie-ups and a lot of things that make it less smooth than how he makes it sound, he does present his deals in a thoroughly engaging way. His first big project was taking the Commodore Hotel, renovating it and turning it into now what is the Grand Hyatt. And from here you can really get an insight into the man's vision and the man's ability to get the job done and make a name of himself. A really interesting part is the way he describes the other options he also had to make the deal. So when he first purchased the Commodore Hotel, it was a pretty good plot of land right near Grand Central Station, but it was a failing hotel, it was dirty, it was washed up, it was losing money. And the way he presents it is that firstly, he could just probably sell the land for a nice profit when land prices inevitably increase in Manhattan. Or he could take what's there of the Commodore Hotel, clean it up, and give it a new brand, and keep that as a marginally profitable business. But here's where the Trump vision comes in, is he says no to those ideas. He instead envisions the super modern glass and concrete Grand Hyatt that we see today. And it's how he describes how he was able to do this that's so fascinating with this book. Later in the book, he also talks about how he built Trump Tower, and in a section where he talks about how he acquired the land rights and the air rights above Trump Tower, he goes into little details about all the little deals he made and how they all add up to give him the most benefit, and this is really interesting. However, with all the deals in the book, he doesn't mention the downside a lot. He talks about securing his financing from banks and securing what contractors he's going to use to build the actual developments that he's making, and of course the kind of relationships that he's forging with places such as like Chase Manhattan Bank, as it was back then, or Victor Palmieri, who was one of the first contacts he really got to know when he was living in Manhattan. He never talks about having to pay these people. He never talks about tough negotiations or being held up in negotiations with these people. And he also makes every deal seem as though it's exactly what he wants and it's the perfect benefit for him. And this is where the American dream thing that Trump's building, the old greed is good, kind of flashy, showy, I am the best kind of attitude that Trump's promoting here, it starts to fall apart when you notice an inadequacy of realism. Another weak point is the chapter in which he tries to make this a business book. This isn't a business book. This is a memoir of a businessman. And although it's intriguing and you get a view into that kind of life, it's not a business book. Don't read this for business ideas because it's frankly awful. Trump has ignored his own advice throughout his career. If you've read about any of the relationships he actually had with banks, which aren't mentioned in this, and he's saying keep your people on side because you're going to have to rely on them for finance. He doesn't follow them in real life. This isn't a business book. When he says stuff like think big, because you're thinking anyway, so you might as well think big, it's all well and good, but this really has no substance to it as a business book, and it's really just better viewed as a memoir of a businessman. Later on in the book, he talks about his Atlantic City projects, Trump Plaza and Trump's Casino, as well as the Woolman Rink in New York City. What shines through is the simplicity of his decision-making. He says, if a deal, you can't do it. If it's too expensive, then don't do it. And I think that's a good part of this book, is talking about deals, not about business, but about deals in themselves. He does say, use your leverage, which is a very good point. He actually showcases throughout the book, in a few times, how he managed to use significant leverage and not allowing the other party to know how badly he wanted things to his advantage to secure better deals. And I think that this is the one thing you could possibly take from this book, is leverage, in a word, is to basically do everything you can under the sun to try and get a better price for what you're doing. When Trump was trying to secure the land for Trump Tower, he talked to the original tenants, Bonwit Teller, your company's going to fail without this money, we can provide you things that are so much better. When Trump Tower went up, he's like, this is the finest, this is the most luxurious, this is the best designed tower in the land, this is the best you're going to get in New York City. And he promoted and promoted and promoted, and as such, it became this icon of luxury and splendor and celebrity. Despite the fact, doesn't mention this in the book, funnily enough, Trump Tower, the apartments were actually built of the cheapest material possible, the absolute lowest cost material he could get his hands on. Only the atrium, which is full of marble and brass and stuff, is actually opulent and elegant in any way. That's all just a kind of priming, marketing and branding tool that Trump did use, and in some ways very cleverly used, to try and give Trump Tower this image of luxury and splendor. But if Trump knew to do something, he knew how to brand things, and he does brand himself very well in this book. He comes across ambitious, smart, and, he knows himself to be very clever and very successful, but yet not egotistical in this book. And I have to give that to Tony Schwarz as the actual writer of this book. Did a very good job with that one. Basically, Trump was an expert in convincing others that their things weren't worth very much, and then convincing others that his things were worth a lot. And that's probably the best thing you can take from this book. The man really knew how to brand himself and to influence other people. Here's another thing the book doesn't mention. When Trump built Trump's castle, it was too big a project for him, really. He was actually bankrupt until his father, Fred Trump, went to Trump's castle, put $3 million of his money, gave it in, took the chips, made no bets, $3 million extra revenue that Trump desperately needed at that point. Doesn't say that anywhere in here. Trump's castle is a huge success, biggest revenues in the globe, best casino on the globe. So to sum up my thoughts on the book, it's a very slick, suave, sexy book. It makes Trump seem like a glamorous deal maker. It makes all his projects seem fantastic successes, that there have been absolutely no problems in his life, because if you follow his guide, everything will be absolutely fine because you will be a master deal maker. The business details throughout the book and the actual descriptions of his projects, you get a kind of behind the scenes look at some of the stuff, and that bit's very interesting, very good. My favourite bits probably are the diary at the beginning of the book showing all the deals he makes in a week, and a little end section that shows what happened to those deals. You get the kind of before and after effect, and it's just very interesting, really. The book, however, is far too light on the negatives. It lacks realism. It makes you believe in the American dream, as one publication said, partly because it's not true, really. There's very little mention of the negatives, very little mention of the downsides, and very little mention of anything at all that went wrong. His privilege, his running out of money, his troubled marriage, none of that is in here. But overall, I enjoyed the book as just kind of thing to read. On entertainment value, the book's pretty fantastic, to be honest. Not a great business book. If you're going to take something from it, use your leverage and promote what you have. Make the other guy feel like his stuff isn't worth anything. That's pretty much all you can have from it, summed up. But I would definitely recommend a read as an entertainment kind of thing. All right, I've been Bar Snacks. See you in a bit. Goodbye.